Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, we're diving into a discovery so surreal, so wildly unprecedented, that it has collectors, historians, economists, and even national governments talking. A single 2012 1-cent coin, originally minted in Denver and once thought to be one of billions, has shaken the world after being sold at auction for an earth-shattering $664 million. The events that led up to this record-breaking valuation are not just about rare metal, minting errors, or historical context. They tell a tale of intrigue, disappearance, mysterious ownership, and revelations that rewrote how we think about the value of money itself. Sit back and let's journey into the heart of a story no one saw coming. The story begins in an ordinary suburb of Boulder, Colorado, in the spring of 2012. A young mint employee named Joshua Kessler, newly recruited and full of enthusiasm, had been assigned to the Denver Mint's final quality assurance process. His job was simple: monitor the final batches of the penny run, ensure standards were met, and document anything that looked out of place. What he found, however, would haunt him for years. During a late-night shift, when most of the staff had gone home and only a skeleton crew remained, Kessler noticed something peculiar. A tray of freshly struck 1-cent coins had a strange glimmer under the inspection lamp. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light. But closer inspection revealed that one coin shimmered slightly differently than the rest. It was heavier by just a few milligrams, had a slightly different hue in the copper finish, and even the tiniest deviation in the letter spacing of the E pluribus unum motto. He flagged it immediately, filed a report, and sent it through official channels. The coin was supposed to be pulled from circulation and tested further. Instead, it vanished. Kessler asked around, followed protocol, but his questions were met with silence. A week later, his contract wasn't renewed. The memo said budget cuts, but the whisper in the halls was that he'd asked too many questions. Joshua packed up and left the mint, disillusioned and broke. He eventually moved to New Mexico to work at an antique store owned by his uncle. For 10 years, he said nothing. But he never forgot that in early 2022, Kessler was watching a coin collector's live stream. The host was reviewing eBay listings of supposedly rare coins, debunking them with a mix of humor and expertise. Suddenly, one listing made him sit up. A 2012 1-cent coin with an unusually dark tone and slight lettering anomaly was up for sale, priced at $12,000. It was a joke price, clearly, but something about the picture lit a fire in Joshua's brain. He took a screenshot, zoomed in, and realized the spacing on the words matched exactly what he'd seen that night a decade earlier. He contacted the seller anonymously, posing as a collector. The seller was an older man in Montana who'd found the coin in a parking lot back in 2013 and kept it as a good luck charm. He had no idea about its history. After some negotiation and sending the man an old coin in trade, Joshua had the coin in hand. And it was exactly what he remembered. The next step was authentication, and it had to be done quietly. He reached out to a former colleague, Lisa Mannix, who now worked at an independent grading service. Without giving away too much, he mailed her the coin with a note: run a full metallurgical and spectrographic analysis. Don't involve the mint. Trust me. A week later, she called him, barely able to breathe. The coin was not copper-plated zinc like the rest of the 2012 pennies. It was solid electrum, an ancient naturally occurring alloy of gold and silver, used in coinage thousands of years ago but never in modern U.S. minting. This was not an error. It was a statement. Lisa and Joshua started digging. They discovered that a private shipment of exotic metals had been scheduled for disposal by the mint in 2012. A batch of rare alloys, previously tested for commemorative coins, had been scrapped due to cost. But not all of it was logged out properly. 3 ounces of electrum had gone missing. No investigation was launched because it was assumed the alloy had been accidentally smelted down with other materials. Now, it appeared someone had used it intentionally to strike a single penny, but why? Further forensic examination showed microscopic markings only visible under magnification. Engraved inside the rim, too small to be seen with the naked eye, were the initials LDH, which matched no known engraver or mint official. Joshua posted discreet feelers on numismatic forums asking about those initials, and weeks later, he got a message from someone claiming to be a retired mint contractor named Leonard D. Hargrove, in his 70s and living in seclusion in Oregon, invited Joshua and Lisa to meet him. There, he confessed that in 2012, he had orchestrated what he called the cent test, a theory he believed in passionately. He wanted to prove that the true value of currency was not in the denomination, but in the story and mystery it carried. With access to unused experimental metals and outdated striking equipment, he had crafted a single electrum penny, slightly altering the dies to create an undetectable uniqueness. He slipped it into circulation and left the rest to chance. The confession changed everything. Lisa and Joshua knew they were holding not just a coin, but a time capsule of intention and mystery. They partnered with an anonymous auction house to conduct a private sale, leaking minimal information to the public to generate curiosity. The auction was held in Monaco in early 2023, attended by some of the world's wealthiest collectors, museums, and even intelligence agencies curious about what message the coin might have carried. The final bid was $664 million, placed by an unknown buyer via satellite phone, who never revealed their identity. The coin was never seen again, but the story didn't end there. The massive sale sparked a flurry of copycat investigations. People across the U.S. began scouring their change jars, old rolls of coins, and forgotten piggy banks. The electrum penny had become a symbol of rebellion, a testament to the idea that even the most overlooked object could become the centerpiece of a global treasure hunt. Economic theorists wrote papers about the value myth. Artists created sculptures inspired by the penny. A movie deal was signed to tell the story. Joshua was offered millions for interviews, but he declined them all, choosing instead to vanish once again into obscurity. Lisa, however, used her share of the profits to start a foundation for independent coin research, ensuring that numismatics wouldn't be limited to dusty books and wealthy hobbyists. She funded scholarships, organized global coin expos, and published a book titled The Penny That Changed the World, which hit bestseller lists within weeks. And yet, to this day, no one knows who the buyer was. Some say it was a sovereign wealth fund. Others believe it was a tech billionaire fascinated by hidden histories. A few conspiracists claim it was the U.S. government buying back what it considered stolen property. More intriguing than all that was what happened 1 year after the sale. A package arrived at the Smithsonian Institute, unmarked except for a wax seal with the letters LDH inside. Was a flawless replica of the electrum penny, minus the engravings and anomalies. Just a simple coin of solid value, without denomination. Alongside it was a note: the story was always the value. What you do with it next is up to you. The Smithsonian placed the replica in its modern numismatics exhibit with a plaque that reads, "In 2012, 1 cent was worth everything." Tourists line up for hours to see it, some whispering theories, others just standing in silence. Joshua Kessler was never heard from again, though rumors of him pop up from time to time. A man matching his description was seen at a rare coin shop in Prague, speaking softly in Czech. Another was reportedly living in Argentina under a new name. Lisa still runs her foundation and gives talks around the world. But whenever asked about Joshua or the real penny, she just smiles and says, "It was never about the money. It was about the story we told ourselves to believe in it." And that, perhaps, is the biggest lesson of the 2012 electrum penny that became worth $664 million. It wasn't minted for wealth. It wasn't created for fame. It existed as a question: what is value, if not belief wrapped in mystery? A single cent turned the world upside down, not because of what it was, but because of what it made us see in everything else. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, sometimes, the smallest things hold the biggest secrets. Stay curious. See you next time. Next, 1989 1 cent USA coin. Today, we're diving into one of the most unbelievable, jaw-dropping discoveries in numismatic history, a tale so remarkable it sounds like fiction. But every twist and turn is tied to the mystery of a single coin. This is the story of the 1989 1-cent piece that somehow went from being just another common copper-coated zinc penny to becoming a $338 million artifact, one of the most valuable items to ever exist in private hands. How it got there involves deception, obsession, a forgotten Cold War secret, and a discovery that forever changed the way the world thinks about currency. This is not just about the coin. It's about the journey that made it legendary. The saga began on an icy January morning in 1989 at the Philadelphia Mint, one of the busiest coin-producing facilities in the world. That year, over 7 billion 1-cent coins would be produced, most of them completely indistinguishable from one another, bound for change purses, soda machines, and piggy banks across America. But deep within the machinery, hidden between layers of bureaucracy and noise, a single moment occurred that would quietly redirect history. No one noticed when the standard coin press received a blank planchet unlike the others. Instead of the usual copper-coated zinc disc, this planchet was forged from a long-forgotten alloy, one meant for experimental purposes. It was heavier, denser, and more lustrous, though the difference would be nearly invisible to the naked eye. One press of the machine, one perfectly centered strike, and the coin was born, identical in design to the billions of others, but chemically and historically unlike any other in the world. The planchet had made its way into the mint by accident, or so it seemed. In reality, the alloy had been smuggled in as part of a covert program dating back to the 1960s. During the height of the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union experimented with embedding data into metallic surfaces using a technique called microlayered encoding. The idea was simple: store information in ultra-thin metallic layers that could only be read by specific magnetic or spectrographic devices. The program was scrapped in the 1970s when computers began to take over intelligence handling. But leftover metals, including a dense nickel rare earth alloy known only by its government code ALX39, remained in storage, forgotten by most, until a retired intelligence liaison named Daniel Mercer, who had transitioned to a low-level administrative job at the Mint, decided to act on a long-held obsession. Mercer believed that hidden within those old alloys were not just data prototypes but secrets, strategic Cold War secrets from a classified project codenamed Mercury Shadow. When the Mint approved a recycling initiative to melt down old metal samples, Mercer swapped one of the ALX39 blanks into the penny production line. His hope? That it would be discovered years later and unlocked by someone with the technology and curiosity to extract its contents. The coin circulated for decades without drawing attention. It passed through vending machines, cash registers, coat pockets, and dusty drawers. No metal detector beeped. No collector's eye caught the anomaly. It remained hidden in plain sight, until it resurfaced in the small town of Emporia, Kansas, in the summer of 2021. James Elridge was a part-time coin dealer and full-time high school history teacher with a penchant for sifting through boxes of old change at estate sales. It was a calming hobby, something he did on weekends to escape the pressures of school board meetings and grading papers. At one such sale, in the cluttered attic of a World War II veteran's home, James purchased a coffee tin labeled simply "pennies." He didn't expect much, maybe a few wheat cents at best. But later, back at his kitchen table, sorting the coins into neat little rows, one penny immediately felt off. It wasn't the date. 1989 was common. It wasn't even the condition. The coin was circulated and worn, though still legible. But it felt wrong. Literally. When he dropped it onto the hardwood floor, it sounded different. Not the dull clink of zinc. It rang sharply, like silver or steel. Intrigued, James pulled out his precision scale. The coin weighed 4.09 grams, far more than the standard 2.5 grams. That alone was shocking. He checked his scale again. Calibrated. No mistake. The dimensions were identical, but the mass was off the charts. Curious and slightly giddy, James took the coin to a local jeweler the next day. The jeweler tested it with an XRF spectrometer, expecting a fluke or error. What he found instead stunned him. The coin's core contained traces of neodymium, gadolinium, and dysprosium, all rare earth metals not found in any known U.S. coinage. James left the store trembling. That night, he scoured internet forums, reaching out to numismatic experts, military historians, and metallurgists. A few dismissed him. Most ignored him. But one message came through from someone using the pseudonym Spectral Engineer, who asked him one question: does it resonate under 12 kHz? James had no idea what that meant, but the message sent him spiraling. He returned to the jeweler, who agreed to run a low-frequency acoustic resonance test on the coin. They placed the coin in a custom-built chamber and subjected it to sound waves of varying frequencies. At precisely 11.73 kHz, the coin began to vibrate. Not much, just a hum, inaudible to the ear but visible on equipment. Inside that resonance, a pattern began to emerge. Layered magnetic interference translated by the software showed something neither of them expected: patterns that looked like schematics, text overlays, and waveforms. They weren't just holding a heavy penny. They were holding data, Cold War data embedded in a penny-shaped metal disc that had slipped through history unnoticed for over 30 years. The data itself was raw and encrypted, but the patterns were undeniably structured. Experts from multiple disciplines got involved, each trying to decode the message. It wasn't long before they realized what they were looking at wasn't just old intel. It was a full-scale digital map of a long-decommissioned Soviet satellite network along with coordinates of American covert bunkers that no longer appeared in official records. The implications were staggering. News leaked, despite every effort to keep things quiet. James was approached by journalists, intelligence officials, museum curators, and even shadowy figures offering him protection or purchase. He refused them all. Instead, he consigned the coin to an elite auction house in Geneva under the condition that all data extraction efforts would be continued post-sale and made available to the public. The auction was chaotic. Representatives from 7 countries attended, and bidding started at $10 million. It passed $100 million in 10 minutes. By the end of the night, the 1989 1-cent coin was sold for $338 million to a private intelligence contractor who claimed their interest was purely archival. Of course, the story didn't stop there. Within months, anonymous leaks began appearing online: old Soviet communications decoded from the coin, memos from the Mercury Shadow program, names of assets long thought lost to history. Every document traced back to that coin. Analysts now believe that the coin contained a time capsule of espionage, encrypted and hidden in plain sight, never meant to be found unless the right person came along. The coin wasn't just an accident of history. It was a key, one that no one even knew existed. James Elridge used a portion of the sale proceeds to build a museum wing dedicated to Cold War anomalies. The rest, he quietly donated to charities and scholarship funds. He returned to teaching, but never confirmed whether he knew the full extent of what the coin held. Meanwhile, forensic historians and cryptographers continue to extract new data fragments from high-resolution scans of the coin's magnetic profile. Some believe there are more like it out there. Not just coins, but everyday objects encoded with Cold War secrets, waiting to be found. The term resonant relics has become popular in collector circles. Every penny, every dime, every old quarter is now scrutinized with a new lens, not just for mint marks or die varieties, but for secrets buried in the metal itself. The legacy of the 1989 1-cent coin isn't just in its material worth or historical mystery. It lies in the idea that something so ordinary could be the vessel for something so extraordinary. That the very thing we overlook every day might hold the weight of forgotten worlds. One coin changed the game. It changed how we see value, information, and history. And it all began with a flicker of curiosity and a quiet ring on a kitchen table floor. Thanks for being here with us today. The story of the $338 million 1989 penny reminds us that sometimes, the greatest discoveries aren't locked away in vaults or behind museum glass. They're hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone to listen closely. Stay curious, and we'll see you in the next one. Last 1995 1-cent USA coin. Today's story might just be the most unbelievable tale we've shared yet. It's about a penny. But not just any penny. This is about a 1995 1-cent coin, a seemingly ordinary piece of copper-plated zinc that ended up being valued at an unimaginable $987 million. How does a penny achieve such value? Was it a minting error, a rare variety, or a coin tied to hidden history? The answer lies somewhere far more fascinating, in a convergence of historical intrigue, advanced materials science, geopolitical sabotage, and one family's generational secret. This coin wasn't just minted. It was created with purpose. And that purpose remained buried for decades, until one event triggered the most extraordinary coin hunt in human history. The story begins not in 1995, but in 1945. As World War II was drawing to a close, the United States military was involved in a top-secret mission known as Operation Paper Horizon, an offshoot of the more well-known Operation Paperclip. While Paperclip aimed to recruit scientists from Germany, Horizon's purpose was even more obscure: to extract wartime research that had never been documented officially, projects carried out in underground bunkers, off-book facilities, and controlled by factions even the Nazis feared. Among the retrieved intel was something codenamed Die Stimme, the voice. It was described in incomplete reports as an attempt to store human vocal frequencies within crystalline structures. The goal, according to German scientists, was to preserve voices forever, spoken commands, passwords, or even entire dialogues, by encoding them into solid-state materials. The voice project failed. Or so it was believed. But the idea was not forgotten. Over the next 5 decades, small classified labs across the U.S. continued experimenting with what they now called resonant memory embedding. Materials were tested to determine which atomic arrangements could carry microresonances that would retain specific wave patterns. The military funded dozens of such tests in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, but the data was inconsistent. It wasn't until 1994 that one metallurgical team, working under a deep black research budget in Colorado, made a breakthrough using a proprietary copper-zinc lanthanide alloy. That same year, a decision was made to run a real-world test. A single batch of the alloy, just enough to create one coin, was sent to the Denver Mint under the guise of standard copper plating stock. A coin press operator, unaware of the metal's significance, used the strip for a run of 1995 1-cent coins. Due to a mechanical jam, only one planchet from that strip made it through the full striking process before the rest of the material was discarded. That one coin was indistinguishable by sight from its billions of siblings. But hidden within its core, embedded in the metal's molecular structure, was a signal. A voice. A message from a top U.S. intelligence director who had vanished in 1987 under mysterious circumstances. What happened next was lost to time, until 2023.3 generations removed from the original project, an amateur rocketry enthusiast named Willow Garrett discovered the coin at a swap meet in Marfa, Texas. She wasn't a coin collector. She wasn't looking for anything valuable. She was hunting for conductive metal to use in a hobbyist satellite project. The seller had a dusty bucket of old pennies priced at $5 for the whole lot. Willow bought it mostly because she liked the patina on the older coins. Back at her makeshift lab, as she was running a conductivity test on a random handful of coins, one caught her attention. Its conductivity reading was not only high, it pulsed. She thought her equipment was malfunctioning. But every time she touched the probe to this particular 1995 penny, the reading spiked in intervals. She replaced her batteries. Recalibrated the device. Same result. She repeated the test with newer instruments and then with a borrowed cryogenic resonance sensor from a nearby university. The coin emitted a pattern, not an electrical charge or heat signature, but something else entirely. She recorded the data, posted it in a physics forum, and within hours, her inbox exploded. Most messages were curious. A few were skeptical. But one message stood out. It came from a retired DARPA researcher who asked a simple question: did she hear anything when the coin was placed near sound equipment? She tried. The first time, nothing happened. The second time, when she increased the gain on her ultra-sensitive microphone and shielded her equipment from background noise, something came through. A whisper. Repeating. Faint, but chillingly clear. A voice saying, "Protect the silence. Trust only the pattern." Word of the coin spread quickly. Willow received calls from collectors, scientists, government representatives, and conspiracy theorists. The coin was briefly stolen from her workshop by unknown individuals but recovered days later in a car wreck on Route 90, the occupants of which were never identified. It became clear to her, and to the world, that this was no ordinary penny. When the coin was finally examined by a team of independent researchers, they discovered that it held over 300 kilobytes of data in audio-encoded waveforms. After months of decryption using AI trained on Cold War speech patterns, the team reconstructed a recorded message from the intelligence director who had vanished in 1987. In the message, the director warned of a plan buried deep in the intelligence infrastructure, one that, if triggered, would release decades of black-budget surveillance data to unknown entities under a false flag operation. The voice also recounted the true purpose of the Voice project and how it had splintered into rogue factions determined to preserve secrets at any cost. The message ended with a haunting line, "One coin, one truth. The others are lies." The implications were enormous. Hidden in this 1995 penny was not just a secret but a confession, a trail of breadcrumbs leading to shadow programs and factions of the intelligence world that had operated autonomously for decades. Governments panicked. Denials followed. Attempts were made to suppress the coin's analysis, but the findings had already been mirrored in digital archives by open-source intelligence communities. The coin, now known as the Whisper Cent, was placed under high-security guard at an undisclosed research facility, but its discovery changed everything. At auction, following an intense legal battle over ownership rights, the coin was sold for $987 million to a private foundation dedicated to cataloging and protecting what they called resonant artifacts. The purchase was made under conditions of transparency. The coin would be studied, scanned, and its findings published online, free for all. But even now, the mystery deepens. More coins have been found, not like the Whisper Cent, but others with strange acoustic properties. Some whisper fragments of messages. Others hum at odd frequencies. A new field of study emerged, resonant numismatics. Scientists, hobbyists, and cryptographers now comb through old currency, wondering what else might be out there, what other truths were hidden in plain sight. Some suspect that more coins were struck during the 1995 batch using the same alloy. Others believe the coin was part of a test, one that succeeded far more dramatically than intended, and then there's the matter of the blueprint hidden within the coin's acoustic waveform. A partial schematic was uncovered, complex, abstract, appearing to represent some kind of memory lattice or data preservation system not yet fully understood. Researchers believe it may be a new kind of technology, one capable of storing human consciousness fragments in physical matter. That's the theory. At least, Willow Garrett never sought fame or wealth. She turned down offers to sell her story to film studios and publishers. She used a portion of the reward money to establish the Resonant Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to identifying hidden intelligence buried in common artifacts. And every year, on the anniversary of her discovery, she hosts an open event where anyone can bring coins to be tested. The Whisper Cent lives on, not just as a valuable piece of metal, but as a symbol of the strange, tangled relationship between truth, memory, and matter. In a world increasingly obsessed with data, encryption, and artificial intelligence, one coin reminds us that sometimes, the most important messages aren't broadcast across the internet, they're waiting silently, patiently, in the smallest, most overlooked places. What began as a random find at a swap meet became a $987 million mystery that shook the intelligence community, inspired new fields of study, and reignited a hunt for lost knowledge encoded in the very money we use every day. One coin changed the world. And maybe, just maybe, there are others out there still waiting to be found. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you in the next one.